Joker the Fool here, and welcome back to Poll Review. And this is going to be episode 6 of Poll Review, and if this is your first time watching, then it's basically a series. It's going to be weekly, around every Sunday, every Monday. I was planning, so every week, either Sunday or Monday, depending on when I feel like filming it, where I go through 7 of the daily polls. Poll series I do on exclusively games. Just something I do. And I go through the poll topic, the results, why I did the daily poll, and then what the community said in the replies below. And we're going to start off this episode of Poll Review with Daily Poll 36. Do you play visual novels? And this is one of the daily polls that just sort of, one of the poll topics that just sort of came to my head, and I decided to do it. So we'll look at the replies. Most people play VNs rarely. A few people have played one VN. Some have played one occasionally, and the biggest one was I don't play any VNs. So yeah, most people don't. Most people either they haven't played it or they played them rarely. So only played one. But you see, so Couple's got this one, visual novels, mostly low budget. He says, doesn't like anime. So there's that, where he says, doesn't play the games, no interest, doesn't get the weep scene. Glad they have something they can enjoy. Not hurting anyone. Let's see, Lord Banagars played Fate Stay Night. I think it was originally on the PlayStation 2. Udo, I don't know. I say that both PS4 games. I'm about to start the Silver Case by Pseudo51. That's about it. Twitch it doesn't play any, doesn't interest him. Sword Magicians only play Doki Doki because it's free. I'd like to try more, but the price usually cuts me off. I could buy some of the gameplay instead. I've played some JRPGs with VN elements in them that I really liked. So, let's see. Yeah, so most of these, Retro 84 pretty active in the polls. Ace Attorney, Dragon Rampa, Hotel Dusk. Thomas JCG's played a few. They aren't his first choice of game, or even the 20th. They have to be really good, like Doki Doki, to get on his radar. Let's see, Jack of Tears has got a pretty good reply. So I'll leave all the links. I'll leave links to all the daily polls I talk about in this episode in the description, so you can check these out. But most of them are saying like I don't really play them, or I played one or two, or they talk about the ones that they played. And let's go on to Daily Poll 37. Have you ever crowdfunded the game? This is another one that just popped in my head. I found it crowdfunded to myself, one being the Silent Night and Happiness game, and the other Tower of Fate, a game by Barry McCabe, which is pretty cool. They're both in development. They're both supposed to be coming out sometime this year. I'm pretty sure about that. Let's see. So most people have crowdfunded they've either crowdfunded more than one game, or they have crowdfunded a game. And then, some people bought a crowdfunded game after release, and then never crowdfunded a game or bought one that was. Lucky Shots purchased some early access games, but not participated in crowdfunding pre-release. Retro 84 has bought crowdfunding games, never tipped into crowdfunding. I've heard rumor fishy stories about some of these, and I just wished away for the finished product. Pretty fair take. Yeah, you're pretty certain to not get burned if you do something like that. Jack of Tears has regretted doing so every time, as his games come out years later fail to deliver on even the basic promises they made. Once people realize they could leave projects in indefinite production and not actually have to deliver on their hype, crowdfunding went to shit. Mad Mummy's he's crowdfunded 4 games. One got a release, never played it for some reason, still in his backlog. It was ages ago. 2 of them turned out to be complete scams, and neither released a game up to this point, over 5 years later, and the 4th was a game he actually played and enjoyed, but that was way back in 2013. Doesn't think he's crowdfunding a game again. Trust no one. Both the Bice Bowl games, when they release, if they appear to be good. Merlin did it before and entirely regret it if he learned his lesson. Well, Cuppa brings up a good point, says no. And with what happened with Phoenix Point, again, let's see, well, he's talking about how Phoenix betrayed their backers by going Epic exclusive, and that's definitely a rescue. That's definitely a risky run when you crowdfund and stuff like that. But let's move on to Daily Poll 38. Do you play Artifacting? I saw this article on EG about one of the last people who actually streamed Artifact, essentially just abandoning the game, and that was around the time that Valve came out and they weren't going to be consistently updating the game. They were going to relaunch. Yeah, they're going to relaunch it, and they weren't going to trickle updates. They're going to wait for a while and then relaunch the game with a big update. And he banned the game. So with that, saw that EG article, that news combined, figured I'd make a poll about it. Pretty definitive. 85% of the people have never played Artifact, and Beowulf, pretty active in the polls, doesn't like the idea of having to pay for a game so he can pay again to play it anyway. And I won't play it even after it goes free to play. He's basically saying, play Magic the Gathering, and that game made sense to him, like buying the cards in the booster packs as you were getting actual product, which is understandable. If you've seen the back, I got a Magic poster, but I bought one pack of Magic cards and I never played the game. Like, I just bought it back in like 2015, and I've never played Magic with anybody. Like, I've seen Magic played when I was at camp when I was a kid, but they never they wouldn't let me play. They wouldn't let me, the kids, they wouldn't let me play with other people's decks because I didn't have one, and I never really got one. But that's when I first heard about Magic, was when I was at camp and just watching kids play it. Still never played a game of Magic, and I spent more time reading up on the controversies about Magic than I've ever have playing the game itself. But that's aside from the point. Twitch has never played it. The only digital card games he tried are Talisman and Card City Knights. Never caught my fancy, and I have no interest in trying a card game with an overall mixed reviews, and recently overwhelmingly negative reviews. Yep, so Merlin should have had an option for he didn't even know it existed, because he sure as hell didn't. So that's a pretty definitive, it's a pretty definitive thing, I would say. Most people never played Artifact. Most people probably haven't even heard of the game, which is pretty sad considering it's a game made by Valve. But we'll go on to Daily Poll 39. Inaccurately titled, Do You Like eSports? Should have been, Do You Watch eSports? But I was a bit of an idiot when I came up with the title and I did the poll. But the mods are the only ones who can change titles, and I'm not a mod on the forum, and the last time I tried to get a title change, it never really happened, so you'll just have to deal with it. Most people, they never watch esports, or they rarely watch esports, and summarizing these comments is, Majestic Bower Goat saw Evo once on TV years ago, finds the concept of esports to be laughable. It's like Hannah Network basically doesn't like the idea of it, and Twitch essentially agrees with Majestic Goat. With or without the E, it's not sports. So, Breakfast was at BlizzCon 2018. Watched a non-Korean win the StarCraft 2 World Championship. Was a special case, but normally, watching like Twitch streams and stuff, he wouldn't do that, which is understandable. So Smooth Criminal tracks down BlazeBeef videos from Evo tournaments. Occasionally, you see the kind of flashy combos that pros can pull off. Beyond that, couldn't care less about esports. This is fair to see, really high level play. That's what's good for stuff like Evo. So I don't think the idea of tournaments and stuff are necessarily a bad thing, because you can get some really cool stuff out of it, and you can form a cool community, and you have people watching the games and everything, and that's all fine and dandy. But for most, but there's also a lot of drawbacks in terms of Blizzard being the fun police with how, especially if you look at the Overwatch League and how they do things there. But we're going to go and move on to Daily Poll 40. Do you have a backlog? So this is another one that I just thought of. Backlogs, all those games that you've been meaning to play. I'm playing through Sekiro now, and I've got Division 2 that I want to play as well. I want to finish those games, and then I'll start grinding through my backlog, hopefully before Fire Emblem comes out on the Switch, and then I'll be playing that. So it's got a back. Most people have a backlog of multiple systems. Wicked Wolf says it's embarrassing, but he thinks he's got a bigger backlog versus the games he's completed. Schizo Boy says, I think those without a backlog will be the definite minority. Definitely right. Array, recently pretty active on the daily polls. Has 6 games that needs to play. Low for most people. He's a picky gamer. Having a backlog is just due to time and exhaustion after work. Yeah, really. So, yeah. Yeah, I think, getting on those are pretty long ones. This backlog so big. Even if you got forgot 90% and still have more than you could ever hope to catch up on. Games used to stand in line for a midnight release. Basically saying that you buy so many games at some point, then it's just like, do I even need to buy, games that you were hyped for? So you mentioned Sekiro, which I've been playing for, I really like it, and it's like, you stand in line for the older Dark Souls games, but now just wait, for it to, hit a sale when it comes out. And I'm feeling the same way with, something like Borderlands 3. Like, if Borderlands 3 came out like 2 years ago, I probably would have bought it day one, but it being an Epic exclusive, I'll just wait for it to come out on Steam. And even when it comes out on Steam, I'll probably just wait, because I don't need to spend $60 on every single game. So, Ethan Saito says, so many games, too little time. Definitely agree. So Thomas has managed the impossible and cleared away his entire backlog, and he intends to remain that way. Won't buy anything unless he's going to play it right away. So Mad Pirate says, Humble Bundle seen me playing God, backlog on all of them. So most people have backlogs, very few people don't. And, with bundles and Steam sales and just generally not having the time to do everything that you want to do, backlogs are pretty easy to get. So next one we're going to do is Daily Poll 41. Do you own more independent or do you own more indie games or AAA games? And I'm going through these a bit fast, but this is the second time I'm filming it, so I'm a little frazzled. I forgot to plug in my mic the first time I filmed this, so that's that's why I'm going through this a bit quick. But with this one, most people say they own more indie games, AAA games. Most people say, well, not most, but the biggest, actually no. Well, more people own more AAA than indies, and then it's more indie games than AAA games, and then an equal amount of AAA games and indie games. So, from, most people, Twitch, it says, with Steam, library and estimate, you've got more indie than AAA. GOG backlog is 50-50. Leaning to AAA, which is this is a bit weird, but Star Magician, considering most of the library is physical games, he's got much more AAA than indie, which, I mean, if you're playing most physical releases are from, the bigger companies, since they can afford to print copies and distribute them or make deals with companies like Amazon that smaller companies just straight up can't do. Zoltor, more indie games, definitely. As far as AAA games go, with very few exceptions, he only plays the Japanese ones, as he actually cares about gameplay in his games. And also the fact that indie games are not only cheaper, but are making really high-quality games in genres AAA companies avoid like the plague. G Bullock, way more indie games before due to bundle deals, where usually only 1 or 2 of the counting games offered. Hunter 84 at the moment says it's about half and half. Haven't been much in a mood for AAA games. Talked about this before. I did a video on basically ranting about the AAA industry, and I think Retro agreed with me essentially. He tends to stick with companies that I like those such as Nintendo. Nintendo is one of the last few big AAA companies that are Nintendo is one of the last few AAA companies that actually cares about making games. And I'm not going to say that every game Nintendo makes is good, but they generally care about their games having some sort of integrity. Like, I don't think Nintendo's ever released a full price game with microtransactions in it. I don't think they've ever done that. If they have, then point me to the game that they made. It would have been on. It would have either been on the Wii or the Switch, or the 3DS. But the games that are on the systems that have microtransactions are free-to-play games. So, Jack of Tears says definitely the numbers pretty close to equal straight away from indie games for a long time until the tech reached to a point where they could produce games. They were fun to play on a small budget. So since we hit that point, to his mind, started buying from each pot more or less equally, since there are more indie than AAA worth buying. The gap in number goes faster. Considering the current state of the industry, tends to be more likely to buy indie games now, unless they're on Epic. Though there are still a few AAA titles I'm looking forward to. Pretty fair. Yeah. I mean, indie games didn't become a really big thing until sometime after the 2000s. I mean, once digital distribution became pretty widespread, that's when these smaller studios could afford to be releasing games, because, back in the 90s, I really wasn't around, but back in the 90s and like the sixth generation, I would say, if you wanted to make a game and you wanted people to actually know it existed and buy it, you had to, be on a store shelf. And getting into brick and mortar stores is really expensive. It's only something that bigger companies can afford to do. And if you're a small, 5-man team, less than 20 people or less, which a lot of these indie studios are, you can't afford to be on those brick and mortar shelves. Now, you can barely afford to, you can barely afford rent every month. You can barely afford to pay the people a living wage when you're that small of a company. So what Jack is saying is that the small budget games didn't become viable until digital. Well, he's not saying that specifically, but it didn't become a viable thing until World 1 technology got better. Where the middleware engines became pretty viable to use, and digital distribution became widespread enough that you could actually get a decent amount of sales from it. So Balto says it should be pretty much balanced, although in my play title, 10 for AAA titles says the indies tend to be smaller, with some exceptions like Hollow Knight. Pretty fair. Irritable Squid says it's about half and half for him. Consoles have AAA, and PC is more indie than AAA. Yeah, my Switch has more indie than AAA, just because of the amount of indie games that are on the Switch, and they're usually pretty cheap. And the only AAA games I buy are Nintendo, and for the first 2 years, there hasn't been that many Nintendo games on AAA. I've got them all physically, but I've got more digital games on my Switch than physical. But with that, we'll go on to the last daily poll topic, and this is another one that just popped in my head. When do you think a game should be remastered or remade? And with this one, most people said that it should either be at least 15 years after the game or at least 10 years, with very few people saying at least 5 years. And then some people said that should never be remade or remastered, and then some people said that game should be remade or remastered as soon as new hardware is released. So Twitter says every 10 years doesn't seem like a long enough period of time, and 15 is too long. Thinks a flexible 5-year window for remastering starting at the 10-year mark would be better. It would depend on the game and how much of a fresh coat of paint is needed. Got no problem with remastering in general to increase the game's sound and visual fidelity. Remaking, I'm not so sure about. Take an older game like Morrowind. Would love to see the visuals remastered, matches textures, character models, animations brought up to date, but I would have a problem if the gameplay is changed. Remastering is good, remaking, meh. Which is a pretty agreeable, I would say. Remakes can either be really, really well done, or they can fail absolutely miserably, because when you're you're remaking the game from the ground up, and if you don't know what made that original game good, then you won't really have a chance of remaking it well. So Retro84 says this one made him think. A little iffy with remakes, but they can be fantastic if done well. With that said, I'd say 15 years gives developers time to work on other projects and become used to future hardware so that the remake could have some real potential to shine. Wicked Wolf says, wish there were separate polls over this because remakes and remasters are not the same thing. And I agree they are the same thing, but I'm not sure. I mean, I think it's like a bit lazy if I do like one where it's remakes and then one where it's remasters, but because I try to make every daily poll topic like different from each other, and I'm pretty clean about how I do these things. Like a lot of people on the EG community, they'll do their own polls, and I make it a point, if someone makes a poll on the EG forum and I see it, I participate in it like every damn time. And they're pretty memey about it. Mine are like really they're really clean, they're really straight laced, they're really just they're not really there to be funny, which I like being funny, but I don't know. I'm just like, I guess I'm sort of boring with the daily poll series, but I don't know. Other people seem to like it. Most of them get over like 100 views and usually go into like 2 pages of replies for the most part. Some of them can be a bit of a dud, or some of them can be a bit duds because it's just a topic that doesn't interest the community, which that's my fault. If you don't like it, then you don't like it. So, Galen says, doesn't like remasters in general. The only good reason to remaster something is if there was no particular market on a major platform. So, like, PC during the game's initial release, which is fair, but he goes on to talk about Xenogears and Xenosaga. And I wasn't in PC gaming at the time, but I think most PC players would have wanted Xenogears and Xenosaga on PC when it came out. I think probably would have done well enough, in my opinion. It's just me, but I wasn't really around when those games were out, so what do I know? So Ares says time isn't even the most relevant factor here. Popularity of the title, how aged the mechanics are, and whether or not a graphical upgrade can enhance the experience. Those are far more important. Some games aren't graphically advanced, but still have good art styles and excellent mechanics, and don't need a remaster or remake. No, a game that could use a good remake of the original Assassin's Creed. Mechanics were early days, gameplay was repetitive, but the idea was interesting back then. Of course, if they remade it now, they'd ruin it since Ubisoft can't do anything right anymore. And while I don't think that's entirely true, Ubisoft is definitely pretty iffy with a lot of things that they do. So I could definitely I can understand Aries' concern about a Assassin's Creed remake not being worth the money. So Balta666 says I will tend for 2 generations apart, but also change from standard definition to HD, justified shorter periods in the past, which is understandable, since the difference between 4:3 and 16:9 is ridiculous. So Zargrius Veritas, game mechanics have always been more important to him than graphics. After all, it's what you do in the game that's fun, not how breathtakingly stunning everything looks. If you only focus on the graphics, then you'll be left with an intricate 3D sculpture, beautiful to look at, but probably not something you'd want to stare out for 100 hours. So I'd say games should be upgraded exactly when the graphics and the game start looking so dated that you would have an easier time noticing necessary things on screen if you updated the graphics. All games are fun too, but some of the graphical choices, both for world and interface, kind of makes your eyes bleed after a while, which is pretty good. But I mean, it's definitely what he's talking about. I think only being a thing in like the PS1 and the N64 days. That was like the 5th generation of games where like 3D gaming just became a thing, and it was like no one really knew how to use it. The consoles weren't powerful enough to do much. Like the 8-bit and 16-bit games, like you can play them today, and they still look good. Like I got an NES and a SNES Classic, and those games play really well. They look really nice and everything. So I wouldn't see games like that needing to be remade. But something like the original Metal Gear Solid would definitely be justified in being remade. But that's going up to Konami and asking them to actually do something worthwhile, which so Borgu says he doesn't like it in any entertainment industry. Sure, there are some examples where it worked, but most of the time it's horrible because it was created out of a lack of originality and for the sole purpose cashing in on people's emotional relationship with a franchise. And this is an agreeable thing because, especially with the movie industry, like Hollywood just ran out of ideas, so they'll just remake these like movies that came out in like the 50s and the 60s or 70s, and they won't have the original cast, won't have the original director. They'll completely rewrite the script and they'll absolutely ruin it. And with for the most part, like if a movie in the 70s that came out in the 70s, you can still watch it today, and there really isn't like you'll still be able to have a good time with it. But with some older games, you might not have the hardware for. You might not have it might not be as accessible in terms of like just the graphics of it, the interface, and all that stuff to newer generations. And you could definitely say, well, that's how the game was designed, that's how it should be. But if you want these games to be preserved, then remaking and remastering is a legitimately good thing. But there's definitely a balance between it being done because there's this old game that we want to give to as many people as possible. Between we're out of ideas and we don't feel like developing a good game, so we'll just remaster something for the PlayStation 3 or PlayStation 2 or whatever it happens to be. But this has been the 6th episode of the poll review. So I hope you enjoyed it, and if you liked the video, then like it. If you didn't, you can dislike it, and if you want to stick around for the future episodes of Poll Review that I'll be doing every week, you can hit that subscribe button, and you can also stick around for any other videos I decide to upload to this channel as well. But whatever you do, just have a good day, and I will see you in